children from young, 6 months old and on, are noticing race and how their attitudes about skin color are already forming in preschool and in kindergarten. And because of that, why it is so important to have both proactive conversations about race with your children, and also be prepared for reactive conversations about race. So having some stuff set up beforehand, but also being prepared for those spur of the moment things that children start to say. I'm going to read through a couple of examples given by Dr. Beverly Tatum. You may know her as the author of the book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting at One Table in the Cafeteria? That's not the exact title. You'll see it in a second. And she did a TED Talk about talking to young children about race, and gives examples about how the conversations she has had with her son and examples of what she did, talking about skin color, but then also talking about racism, which can be a very difficult conversation. I'm also going to talk a little bit about what we're doing at St. Francis, and specifically what our anti-racist curriculum looks like for preschool through 2nd grade, and giving some examples for that. And then hopefully we'll have some time to share some resources, things that you've come across, things that you are reading. I will also make this PowerPoint that I'm about to show you as a shareable link, and any resources that you put in the chat, I can add that in as well so that you can access it later. So without further ado, I will start with the presentation. I won't see you anymore, but Jen Griffith is watching the chat, so if there are any questions, she can interrupt me or you can interrupt me. I should also say that I am a lifelong learner and by no means an expert in this material. I feel especially passionate about it, and it's something that I am constantly learning and changing opinions and continuing to push. So by no means feel like I will give you my best, but I'm also open for more ideas and thoughts. So let's take a look. And after months of online classrooms, I should be better at presenting. 1 second. Yes, share, present. Okay. Talking about race with young children, getting the conversation started at home. Now, some community rules during this talk. All the time when we talk about diversity and equity work, we remind participants of these main points. Really, when we're having these conversations, it's something I talk about with the students, to speak from the I perspective, trying to avoid overgeneralizations, listen and process, lean into this discomfort. It is not just a comfortable conversation, but it is a crucial one. Treat the candidness of others as a gift and honor their confidentiality, and suspend judgment of yourself and others. We are all learning and growing from this. There are a lot of ways that people identify, and I just wanted to make sure that you all know that at St. Francis, we are striving to make sure everyone's identity is affirmed and supported. I mean, today we are talking about race and racism, and specifically focusing on combating anti-Blackness, but there are many different ways to look at identity: ability, age, ethnicity, gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, body image, on and on. And not only are we working to affirm and support all of these identities, but all of the teachers and staff at St. Francis are open to hearing where our blind spots are. And I wanted to make a special point to say this because I feel like sometimes parents or families may notice that something is lacking. It happens to me often as a librarian. I've been so grateful when families say, we're looking for more books about queer students and we've only found 3. Do you think the library can order some more? Yes, absolutely. Some middle school students asked me to find more books with Jewish families that didn't take place in World War II. And I was happy to do it. And not only can we have the conversation about what books we're looking for and look for them together, but then also a greater conversation about why don't we see this many books out there. So if you are, the conversation is definitely welcome if someone's identity is not being represented at the school. I just wanted to plug that. So today we are talking about children, about race, and also specifically about anti-Blackness. First, they're already noticing race. They're already noticing race. Now, a lot of my resources come from research done by The Conscious Kid, and I will be plugging that resource over and over again because it is extremely helpful. But this comes from their report about when children start to notice race. As early as 6 months, babies begin to notice and express preference by race. If a baby is in a neighborhood where most of the people are the same race and the faces that they're seeing all have the same skin color, they will start to prefer that skin color to another one. White North American children begin to report negative attitudes towards people of color as early as the age of 3, and they can even use racist language intentionally to create a hierarchy in their classrooms or with other students. And that would start to look like, I want to play with this kid, the other kid is bad, and the other kid has a darker skin color. Or this baby doll is bad, and this baby doll is good. Looking at a black baby doll versus a white baby doll. And then between the ages of 3 and 5, children begin to apply stereotypes and categorize people and express a pro-white and anti-black racial bias. So it's really important to know, a lot of times I hear people say that we will definitely talk to our kid about race, but right now is too soon. But at 6 months, they're already noticing race. So if you are interested in doing this work but feel nervous about having these conversations, please know that your child is already thinking about it and noticing it. This is a PDF that you may have seen before, and it's going to be in the resources. And what I like about it is that it has ages birth through 6, about what kind of development each year children have attitudes about race. And it has a lot of links for how to get ready to have conversations. And what I really love is all of these, as a librarian, these are cited and sourced. And when you click on these links, they will take you to the actual article. The main thing to remember here is that silence about race actually reinforces racism, because then children are left to draw their own conclusions. So I hope that empowers you to be prepared to talk to your kids about race. It's supposed to be an empowering thing and not a stressful, nerve-wracking thing. So I hope that's what you're picking up here and not like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So be prepared to talk to your kids about race. First, remember, this is the proactive stance, that talking to your child about race will not make them racist or cause them to notice race for the first time. They've already noticed. So don't worry about having this conversation will make your kids like crush their innocence or make them notice race for the first time and it's the end of their childhood. It's something that they are already noticing now. And when you talk to them at a very young age, it will give them information so that when they see stereotypes later or hear someone say something inaccurate about skin color or race, they already have this foundation to draw from. They've already had this conversation with you about what skin color is, and how it is important, but it is actually a small difference between human beings. So that's the proactive piece. Now the reactive piece, a reminder that shaming a child, shushing a child, or shutting down a child when they are asking questions about race, and even if they make a comment that is inaccurate, allows those questions or misunderstandings to go unanswered and unchecked. Now, I do not have any young children of my own, but I have worked with them, and I know that they can say some wild stuff out of the blue. You don't know where it's come from, and a lot of times this shushing comes from really embarrassing moments, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And all the literature says that this is actually the time that you should take a moment and correct children, giving them some redirection. So here are some examples from Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? Dr. Beverly Tatum wrote this book, and she also did a TED Talk where she talked specifically about the importance of having these conversations with young children. She said that her son came up to her and said, "Eddie says my skin is brown because I drink too much chocolate milk. Is that true?" She was prepared to have this response. No, your skin is brown because you have something in your skin called melanin. Melanin is very important because it helps protect your skin from the sun. Eddie has melanin in his skin too. Everybody has melanin, but some people have more than others. At your school, you are the kid with the most. And that normalizes the conversation. It gives specific information to a kid, and it's something that you can easily go back to other times that kids have conversations about skin color. She says later that her son said something about black versus white, and she used this conversation to talk about how his white friend just had less melanin than he did. Now here's a more reactive piece. She said a white mother was embarrassed when her child loudly commented, "Look at that girl, why is she so dirty?" The girl that she was talking about was black. And the mom quickly said, "Shush," and I'm sure this is a grocery store, so they got their stuff and moved on. And she said an appropriate response would be something like, "That little girl is not dirty. Her skin is as clean as yours. It's just a different color. Just like we have different hair colors, people have different skin colors." And it takes practice to be ready when something like that happens. But I have found working in the library that it's also okay to take a moment, a few minutes, and say, "You said this, let's talk about it." However, with young children, the quicker that you can have that conversation, the better. I'll pause here. Does anybody have any questions? Can't see anybody. I'll just drink from my buffalo mug while I wait.
And please feel free to type them in the chat.
Okay. All right, I will move on. For preschool and into kindergarten, really, that's when we have a lot of conversations about skin color and identity and loving different identities. And I have the link here for the TED Talk. I really recommend it. It really is a confidence booster to have this conversation. My favorite two books that talk about skin color are All the Colors We Are by Katie Tessinger. This one is a bilingual book. It's in English and in Spanish. And this talks about skin color and specifically talks about melanin, which I think it's really important for kids to understand what that is and why people have different skin colors. And so it's written for preschool and kindergarten age kids. We have a copy in the library. This is also a link, if you click on it, to the someone reading it on YouTube. The Skin You Live In is by Michael Tyler. This is also a link here to the book being read aloud. We also do have it in the library. This one really focuses on how you and all of your friends have so much in common, and that while your skin color is an important part of you, there are so many other ways that you connect with your students, your fellow students and classmates. Skin color is a very special part of each person and should be celebrated, but we all have a lot in common. And it gives interesting ways for kids to describe their skin color. I also threw in Sesame Street's Beautiful Skin Song because it could be a great start to talk about skin, the importance of skin, and then how there are many, many different colors of skin. When talking about racism, I would, again, go back to this. Dr. Tatum talks a lot about, when you're talking about difficult topics like racism, key important things to remember to say is to make sure that you are telling complete truth as much as you can, to make sure that you are framing it in the way that Black, Indigenous, and other people of color are not shown as victims. Like, instead of saying, when talking about slavery, that people were enslaved, instead saying that they were enslaved. So those are really important. Do some research about the proper terminology. And also to make sure that you highlight that while there were a lot of people doing painful and hurtful things, there were also a lot of people fighting against it. And she talks in her TED Talk about how she talked about slavery for the first time with her son when he was 4 years old. And she gives a complete example of that. And so I would go to that when you decide to have those conversations with your children. Now, a lot of times I said that kindergarten through, well, preschool and kindergarten really talks a lot about identity and loving different identities. And in a lot of the book lists that I've seen, conversations about racism and anti-Blackness, really the books that I see don't come up until like second or third grade. However, we are living in a time where very young children are being exposed to the effects of racism and anti-Blackness. And because of that, what I'd love to see is that there are a lot of resources coming out about talking about specifically racism to children. And I'd love to hear which ones you've been using. The Sesame Street Town Hall was really wonderful. Nickelodeon's doing another town hall, and then they've done other pieces in the past that are great for kids. And then the other recommendation I would have is that there are tons of biographies and picture books written about school segregation, violence against people of color that are for kids, and reading those together and having that conversation is possible. I'm going to go into Pollyanna and the anti-racist education that we are starting at St. Francis. Pollyanna, which is an interestingly titled curriculum, was developed by educators at the Dalton School in New York City. They received a grant to make it free for any educators to download and use. And last year, I started doing a lot of the classes in the kindergarten and first grade class. And next year, we're hoping to expand it from preschool through 8th grade. So I wanted to walk you through a few of the lessons and kind of an idea of what's going to be happening at the school. Preschool through kindergarten, we're going to be looking at a lot of books that feature the physical world around us in a celebration of skin color. So this will be the first time in that we would be talking about our skin colors, and in kindergarten, they will start to use paints to actually find their skin color at the end. So click on it, see if we can take a look. You see it? I hope so.
Yes, we see it, Lindsay. Thanks.
Okay, so in kindergarten, and I'll be stretching this into preschool. Pollyanna is actually going to be doing a preschool curriculum soon, so I'm looking forward to that. It starts with an introduction to colors using the book Brown Bear by Bill Martin Jr., and then talking about how different colors are connected to our symbols for different things, using books like Green is a Chili Pepper and Red is a Dragon. Then we get into colors as symbolism, and then eventually start talking about skin color as part of our identity. So some of the books that we're using are a book called One, which is about standing up for people around you. Same, but different, which is about two boys in different parts of the world, one in the US, one in India, and how their lives are similar but also different. And then The Colors of Me and The Skin We Live In are two books that really start to talk about skin color. Then in first grade, the theme is we are a part of a larger community, encouraging kindness, social awareness, and empathy. And it starts with a book called Swimmy, which I love, by Leo Leone. And it is about how a community working together as a group makes you stronger than working alone. This series of 8 lessons looks at how to spread kindness throughout your classroom, the importance of being inclusive, using a book called The Invisible Boy by Tracy Ludwig, finding beauty in our communities. This book is The Last Stop on Market Street by Matt De La Pena. And then A Sense of Self, a celebration of our names. The book that they use for that is called My Name is Yoon. I forget who the author is. I have it somewhere over here. And this is all celebrating what makes us individuals special, unique, and how celebrating that about each other makes our community stronger. And it ends with a celebration of the first grade's unique class community. Then second grade is about diversity around the world, how our geography and our daily lives connect us. This we'll be doing in conjunction with Ms. Brock, who does a very similar unit with the second grade. And this looks at housing around the world, clothing around the world, food around the world, how where we live is part of our identity, and finding connections with people around the world. And it's perfect for library because it reads a lot of nonfiction books, which is something we start to study in earnest in the library. What I want to do with preschool through second grade, I'll be the point person for that. And then third and fourth grade, I'm working with Ann Holmes in her digital literacy class. And then Ann is the point person for middle school. But I'm hoping for greater communication with parents so that you know what we're talking about and we'll be ready to have more robust conversation at home with the tools that the kids have been learning with me and other teachers at school. Here are some resources that I wanted to make sure that you had. Talking Race with Children is an article and a radio clip that's about 20 minutes long from NPR. It has a lot of really great reminders, the importance of being proactive, and links of things to watch together and read on your own before you have these conversations. This book list just came out today from The Conscious Kid, and it's one of the most comprehensive ones that I have seen. They're doing it in conjunction with Google. It's for teachers And so I've sent it out to all the teachers, but it has a really long list of books that would be, as they call, inclusive reads, and it has which grades it goes with. A lot of them have teacher guides as well, which is going to be very helpful for us, but also for you, because they can have some discussion questions that you can use together. And this goes up to 8th grade. Just a shameless plug for my virtual classroom that I did with Salima Jenkins, who is an icon and a visionary. And these are all links to read alouds. Some I read, some I got from YouTube. Make sure you click on the arts and craft supplies, because when you click on that, you get to a very, very cool series by Christian Robinson, who is an amazing illustrator, and he has art projects that are connected to books with incredible conversations, and I love it. And The Conscious Kid. Now, one thing I would highly recommend is getting an account with them through Patreon. I did. It's about $5 a month, and there's also a $1 a month option. And in your mailbox, almost weekly, you get book lists, information, articles that I've been using nonstop. So I highly, highly recommend checking out The Conscious Kid if you haven't already. And if you would like to support them, signing up via their Patreon would be very, very useful. And then this will be the link for the presentation if you want to click on it now and have it. Can you do that? No, I don't think you can. I'll put it in the chat. And that is my presentation. And now if you have questions or resources that you want to share, I would love to hear from all of you. Let me get out of this.
Lindsay, hi, it's Jen. I was just wondering if I got a little feedback there. Sorry. You did such a great job going over the Pollyanna with the preschool through 2nd grade, and we do have a few parents here who have kids who are above 2nd grade. Could you just briefly explain like how what we're doing in the lower school then kind of moves into 3rd, 4th, and even 5th grade, just so they can kind of get an idea, and if they're not from St. Francis, they can hear about what we're doing.
Yeah, the 3rd grade class, the 3rd grade unit is about ripple effects and how, oh, sorry, my doorbell's ringing. I don't know if you can hear it. It rings the Star Spangled Banner, and so it's always very jarring. That happens. It's kind of spooky when you hear it. Well, anyway, so the 3rd grade talks about ripple effects in social justice movements. So the first thing we read is a book called Each Kindness by Jacqueline Woodson. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that book, which is about a girl who ignores another girl who's being bullied. And the girl who is bullied ends up leaving the school, and the main protagonist is left with the feeling of she could have done something and she didn't. And I read it to 3rd graders, and they are rocked because there's no way to have any kind of resolution. And they're like, well, wait, when did she go and make up with the girl and his friends? And I'm like, sometimes that doesn't happen. You have to remember that your actions have these ripple effects. And, it's actually kind of sad that we do that, but it's important for them to know that. So we start with that, and then we move on to a discussion on the transatlantic slave trade and why that happened, how it doesn't get into all of the cruelties of slavery, but it does really give a pretty general explanation. And then from that, it talks about different movements of resistance and social justice. So we talk about Mahatma Gandhi And then we talk about civil rights activists like Bayard Rustin, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr. We talk about how they were influenced by Gandhi, and then how the civil rights movement influenced Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, and then move into more modern activists. And fourth grade really looks deeply at how geography gave some civilizations a leg up and others didn't. And so it's really a kid's version of Jared Diamond's Guns, Germs, and Steel, if you're familiar with that. Ann Holmes and I are reading through it, and we're like, oh man. So we're going to start with third and fourth grade doing the third grade Pollyanna this year, because fourth grade didn't get it, and we think it's important. And then we'll move into, for fourth grade, talking about civilizations and how European civilizations and explorers had a leg up because of where they were located, their access to animals, their access to different crops, where they were physically located on the planet, and how that gave them, how they moved along much faster than civilizations in South America and parts of like Pacific Oceania. And I think that will be really great because they do talk about explorers in fourth grade. And so having this perspective is helpful. And then in fifth grade, we talk a lot about immigration. In sixth grade, they talk a lot about why certain voices aren't heard in history, and looking at Native American voices, Latinx voices, Black and African American voices, LGBT plus voices. And then seventh and eighth grade really looks at institutional racism. And so that's going to mainly be done in humanities with help from other classes. And that is the plan. All right. Any resources that you have all been using and that you would like to share? Oh, yes, John, I really love this book, Not My Idea. And this is a really, really, really great book, especially if kids are starting to hear the terms about white privilege or their responsibility as white students. This one is written for children, yes, like young children.
Well, actually, so first of all, hi, I'm John, and I apologize for barging in on this webinar. I thought this was like a big public webinar that Lindsay was doing. I didn't realize it was mostly for parents at her school. Lindsay and I are friends from high school, and we're both librarians. So I thought I was joining a librarian webinar. So anyway, thank you for having me. So my son is 4, and this book, Not My Idea, is well above a 4-year-old. It's way too many words and way bigger words than a 4-year-old is ready for. But he looks at the pictures while I summarize the content, and that's where we are. And it's worked really, really well just to talk about the idea of being white. And it also, as you're reading it, the plot of the book is the kid observes something and doesn't get the full story from the parent who doesn't want to talk about race. And so it's also good for the parent to say, hey, are any of these behaviors, am I exhibiting any of these behaviors? So, I mean, it's just an awesome book on a lot of levels. So I found it very useful. I just checked it out last week, and now there are 37 holds on it. It must have gone on a list somewhere. But yeah, it's really excellent if you can get your hands on it. The name of the book is Not My Idea, a book about whiteness. And the author's name is Anastasia Higginbotham. It's in the chat.
I just like to add, our neighborhood has quite a few Black Lives Matter signs, and I have 6-year-old twins, and so of course we've been talking a lot about that. About we see people protesting all the time, and we did watch the Sesame Street CNN town hall, And it didn't, can't cover everything in an hour, but it really was a great starting point for those conversations. And similar to what John said in the book, we would watch segments and then pause and really talk about them. So I think that it could really be useful for a variety of age levels.
Oh, Emily, thank you so much for your comment. And it's definitely something I will bring up when we are meeting again in August. And I particularly know how that feels in high school, and a lot of times I had a teacher who would say, "and immigrants," and she would always point to me, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is extremely awkward," and so we wouldn't want that experience to continue today. And also, it is something to definitely bring up in general when we're talking about, and something I've been mindful of is when we're talking about race and racism, to have extra care, because this is a triggering and stressful thing to talk about for students of color in the classroom, especially in a school where there might not be that many other students of color in the classroom. And so, we were talking about this as well. A lot of the middle school teachers are reading Ibram Kendi and Jason Reynolds' book Stamped, and they want to talk about it and bring it into the classroom, but also remembering, like, making sure to make sure that students don't feel singled out when talking about race. It's always a really tricky balance. And one thing that I have thought about while reading a lot about anti-racist education is that the more this comes up and the more natural it is, when we're not just talking about anti-Blackness during Black History Month or about the Asian experience during Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, the more that it comes up regularly, the less it feels like this is a special moment, so we need to have a special guest speaker. That special guest speaker is our third grade student, right? So yes, I think that two ways: being mindful about this and making sure it's on teachers' mind, but also incorporating this so much in our curriculum and making sure that all of our offerings are really inclusive so that it doesn't feel like an outlier or like a special moment. It's really important.
Emily also added, are there any ideas to integrate current families to tell their stories as a part of education? And we haven't discussed that yet, but we can definitely bring that up in August as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that's candidly, I've always wondering, like, do families want me to reach out to them and tell about their experiences, or are they like, oh, why are you asking me to come? So it's good to know that people are interested, and maybe just putting a call out, like, we are looking for examples of all different races, religions, ethnicities to come to our school and just share with students. I think it's a really important thing. Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. Normalizing and expanding on differences, and so kids know, like, there are people in the world that don't look like me, and they are in my community, and we care about each other is what we're trying to do here.
Or even as part of a parent education, program, asking parents to share with each other about their experiences, because we want to continue to educate our parent body as much as possible, which is why we're doing this.
Yeah. A couple other book plug resources, and I'll put it in the chat. We're reading as a family this book called "This Book is Anti-Racist" by Tiffany Jewell. It's super cheap, or at least it was, like $3.99 as an ebook, but I bought the books too. And it's for older students, so those who have older middle school and up students and you want to have a more regular conversation. It has 20 different writing prompts that you can do as a family and come back and share with each other. And it really talks first about your own personal identity, and then talks about what racism is, and then guides you through ways to become anti-racist, and then eventually ways to be an advocate and an ally. And then, of course, you've got Stamped. by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. This one is definitely for 8th grade and up, though, but Ibram Kendi's book, Stand from the Beginning, is about 500 pages long, and it's really great, but if you want to have a primer before you dive in for adults, this is a really good one to read and would really get you prepared for having more difficult conversations about race. The other one, and then for like 3rd graders, I just want everyone to know about Renee Watson. If you don't know about her yet, she writes a lot of great books for 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. And her book, Ways to Make Sunshine, is like a really clearly typed Ramona book. So just finding ways, she's great. We have a lot of really wonderful, diverse books for young adults and a lot of really great books for picture books. But sometimes in that beginning chapter books, they're harder to find. And so feel free to contact me and I can send you a list, but this one is my current favorite. You know, I couldn't stop without doing a book talk with you guys. I got all these people here.
We would expect nothing less, Lindsay.
And Lindsay, I think maybe we could see if we could post some of the links to, especially the book lists, on the website, perhaps, so that would be available to everybody.
Yes. I will also put this, you're welcome. I will also put this Google slideshow as a link in the chat, so you can click on that and get all of my other links. Now, give me a second. Where are you guys? So hopefully that it should be public for everybody and you can view it, and all of the links are ready to go. Anything else?
Before we end, I would just like to publicly say thank you for your work and Salima's work. Well, your work on this, first of all, was amazing. Thank you for all the resources, but also the library that you and Salima created is just really amazing. And I know it got shared quite a bit on social media, and I hope it continues to get shared, but thank you for all the work that went into that, because it's fun and interactive and has just great resources. So we appreciate your work on that.
Oh, no problem. And we'll add more stuff to it as the summer goes on, so keep on checking back.
I wanted to say thank you for that too. It was great with Alice to start some of those conversations, that it wasn't just mom, showing up and saying, hey, let's talk about this. It was sort of a natural segue of this is something familiar, and now, oh, here's an interesting book, let's talk. So it was nice to give it that segue versus just sit down, I need to tell you something important.
That's great. And the one that's called This is a Book About Racism is really, really great for young students. And that publisher has a whole series of talking about difficult things. So you can look, if there's other difficult things you should talk about that's not about race, take a look at that publisher, because they have a bunch of different stuff. Oh, hey. Thanks, guys. This is a real confidence boost. Well, thank you for spending such a beautiful Friday online together. I can't wait to see you all, John included, and when we're all together again. And I can't wait to have all your kids in the library together. I've been missing all their faces, and I hope they're reading. And if you need some book ideas, I'm here. Physically in this room all the time.
Thank you, Lindsay.
You're welcome.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Everybody. See ya.
Have a great weekend.
You too.